Veteran laughed at for inheriting an old lodge. His dog found a hidden treasure beneath the snow. They laughed when they heard he was coming back. Said the lodge was nothing but mold and memory. Said Noah Briggs, the broken vet, must have finally lost it, coming all this way to claim a pile of rotting timber and ghosts. But Noah didn't care. The air shifted as his truck crested the final bend. Deep hollow stretched out behind him like a closed book, the road twisting down toward the frozen pines. Snow clung to the trees in thick, uneven slabs, and the mountains stood still as if holding their breath. The truck creaked beneath him, an old Chevy with more rust than paint, and inside the cab, silence ruled. No radio, just the sound of snow crunching under tires and the low hum of thought. In the passenger seat sat Tucker, 7 years old, scars beneath his sable fur, left ear notched from shrapnel. He wore no vest, no rank patch, but still held himself like he was on patrol, eyes sharp, body coiled. One paw occasionally thumped the vinyl seat as if to say, "I'm ready. Just say the word." Noah gripped the steering wheel tighter. His fingers were red from the cold, knuckles raw. The scar along his right hand throbbed in the freezing air. That burn never healed right. Not in the desert, not in therapy, not in time. When the roof of Pine Lantern Lodge came into view, he stopped the engine. There it was, half buried in snow, the porch sagging, one shutter clinging by a hinge, a chimney split at the crown. The hand-carved sign above the door was barely readable, letters peeling and warped. Pine Lantern Lodge. What used to smell like firewood, oil, and bread now smelled like ash and decay. Tucker shifted, one low whine in his throat. "Yeah," Noah said. "Me too." He stepped out of the truck, boots breaking through the crusted snow. The wind bit at his face, sharp and clean. Behind him, Tucker leapt down, landing silent and sure. Together they walked through the snow-covered path, two shadows against the white. The townsfolk had called it a curse. That damn cabin on the ridge, after his uncle Walter Briggs, passed without warning. They said the lodge swallowed people. Said no one came back the same. Noah didn't believe in curses, but he did believe in ghosts. He reached the porch. One step cracked beneath his weight. The air reeked of wet wood and something older. Rot, maybe, or regret. Inside, the door groaned as it opened. Dust spilled into the light. Furniture covered in sheets, fireplace cold, windows fogged over. The silence felt heavy, like something was listening. Tucker walked in first. Nose low, tail high. He sniffed the corners, ears twitching. A growl rumbled in his chest near the hearth, but he didn't bark. He circled once, then sat, eyes trained on the boarded-up hallway. Noah followed slowly, eyes adjusting. He ran his hand along the wall, solid, cold, his breath puffed white. On the mantel, a rusted lantern stood, beside a sealed envelope, his name written across the front. Noah Briggs. He didn't move to open it. Not yet. Instead, he walked deeper into the lodge. The kitchen still had that old metal kettle, the kind his uncle swore made better coffee. There were photographs on the shelf, some tilted with time. One showed Walter in uniform, standing beside a German shepherd that wasn't Tucker but could have been. The dog in the photo wore a vest marked with a red cross. Its eyes held the same quiet fire. Tucker let out a bark, sharp, sudden. Noah turned. The dog stood near the back door, nose pressed to the crack at the base. He barked again, then scratched at the floorboards. "What is it?" Noah asked. Tucker didn't answer. He barked once more, then sat. Noah knelt. The boards were warped but intact. Yet beneath them, something gave. Not hollow, but not solid either. He grabbed the rusted fireplace poker and wedged it beneath the edge. With a grunt, he pried. The board lifted with a pop of nails. Beneath it, snow. A thin, unnatural drift seeping in from somewhere below. and deeper, a faint glint. Metal, a trapdoor, hidden under layers of floor and neglect. Noah stared at it, heart ticking faster. Cold seeped through his jacket. Tucker stood beside him, unmoving, gaze locked on that dark seam. He reached for the edge and pulled. The door opened with a gasp of air. Damp, earthy, something long forgotten. Stairs led down into shadow. Tucker growled, then descended. Noah followed. The air was different down there, thicker, wet with snowmelt and rust. The walls were lined with old stone and shelf brackets. He clicked on his flashlight. The beam swung wide, dust danced like ash. Then he saw it. A crate, newer than the rest. Marked with one word. Briggs, he approached. The latch was stiff but not locked. Inside a sealed bag, military grade, and beneath it a bundle wrapped in canvas. He lifted it carefully, unwrapped it slow. Within the folds, a leather collar, a brass tag with a name engraved. Tucker, not his Tucker, another one, a different war, a different dog. And beneath the collar, a folded page. He opened it. Not everything we leave behind is buried. Some things wait. W.B. The handwriting was his uncle's, shaky but clear. Tucker whined beside him. The real Tucker. Noah sat on the edge of the crate, the cold bleeding through his jeans, the paper trembling in his hand. He didn't understand yet. Not fully. But he knew this. Whatever this place had been, it had never been just a lodge. It was a message, a memory, a map, and maybe, just maybe, a promise. Above them, wind howled through the broken chimney. Snow shifted on the roof. Noah folded the letter, tucked it into his coat. Looks like you were right to drag me here, boy. Tucker's tail wagged once, then stopped. Behind them, something cracked. Wood. Slow. Measured. Noah spun. From the far corner of the basement, a wall panel slid open. A hidden space. And inside it, just barely visible in the beam of light, was another crate. Smaller. Metal. Sealed tight. A rusted chain wrapped around it. Frost clung to the links. Noah stepped closer. Then he stopped. There, in the dust at his feet, were boot prints. Fresh. Tucker growled low in his throat, and the air in the lodge changed. This place wasn't just haunted by memory. It was hiding something that hadn't wanted to be found. The snow hadn't let up for 3 days. It came in heavy sheets, turning the forest into a blank canvas, muffling every sound except for the wind and the occasional creak of shifting timber. Inside Pine Lantern Lodge, the air was still cold but no longer lifeless. The fireplace snapped softly. Tucker lay near it, eyes half closed, tail flicking every so often, like even in rest he was listening. Noah Briggs stood at the window, hands in the pockets of his flannel jacket. His breath fogged the glass. The outside world was a blur of white and shadow, trees bowing under the weight of fresh powder. He hadn't slept much. The night before, he kept thinking about that second crate, the hidden one. He hadn't opened it yet. He didn't know why. Maybe he wasn't ready for what it might change. Tucker stirred before the thought could finish. He stood quickly, ears alert, body taut. His hackles rose, but he didn't bark. "What is it?" Noah asked. The dog turned, stared at the back door, then bolted. Noah grabbed his coat, boots thudding across the wooden floor. By the time he reached the door, Tucker had already disappeared into the snow, leaving a clear trail of paw prints behind him. "Tucker!" he called, stepping into the cold. The wind hit him like a slap. Snow swirled in gusts, erasing visibility. But he followed. Tucker's tracks cut behind the lodge, toward the tree line where the old water line used to run. Noah moved quickly, crunching through knee-deep snow, heart pounding with the kind of urgency he hadn't felt since combat. Then he saw him, half buried in the drift, digging like mad. Tucker's paws flew in short, precise bursts. Snow sprayed behind him in arcs. He paused only to sniff, then resumed, more frantic. Noah rushed to him. "What are you doing, boy?" But he already knew. There was something under the snow. He dropped to his knees beside Tucker, hands clawing through the icy crust. Beneath the top layer, his fingers struck metal, a flat surface. He scraped faster. The corner of something heavy and square took shape, then a handle, and finally a small brass lock, green with age. It wasn't just a box, it was a hatch. Noah looked at Tucker. The dog's eyes were locked on the tree line now, as if guarding him while he worked. The wind howled through the branches. Noah rose, brushing snow off his gloves. The lock was old but intact. He followed the hinge, finding a small, rusted keyhole. The shape was familiar. Back inside the lodge, he had found a ring of old keys near the fireplace. He sprinted back through the snow, lungs burning. Less than 5 minutes later, he returned, breathless, keys jangling in one gloved hand. Tucker stood exactly where he'd been, still and silent. Noah knelt, fingers numb, trying key after key until one slid in. Click! The lock popped open with a tired groan. The hatch lifted with resistance, hinges squealing against decades of cold. A rush of frozen air spilled out. Damp, metallic, the smell of time. He shone a flashlight into the space below. Steps, narrow, wooden, descending into shadow. Tucker was already at the edge, nose pointed down. "You first?" Noah asked. Tucker answered by going down. Noah followed, flashlight cutting through the dark. The hidden room was small, carved into the earth beneath the snow line. The walls were stone, the floor cement. It didn't look like a cellar or a bomb shelter. It looked intentional. Against one wall sat a wooden trunk, long and flat, wrapped in oilcloth. On top of it, nailed to the wall, was a rusted sign. Healing Center. Proposal, 1982. Noah's breath caught. He dropped to one knee and peeled back the cloth. Inside the trunk were papers, bound in twine. Stacks of them, hand-drawn schematics, letters, a blueprint, detailed diagrams of rooms, training halls, therapy quarters, a map of the lodge grounds, but expanded. Additional cabins, a garden, a training pen for dogs, notes scribbled in the margins, plans for a place that never came to be. Underneath the documents, nestled in the folds of the lining, was another envelope. This one marked, "For Noah." He sat there a moment before opening it. The handwriting was unmistakably his uncle's. "Noah, this lodge was never meant to be just a roof over your head. It was meant to be a roof for others who've lost theirs. You'll find things down here that don't make much sense at first. That's okay. Truth takes time to settle. But know this, what's buried here is worth more than money. This place isn't just a memory, it's a promise." "Keep it alive." W.B. Noah read the letter twice, then folded it and tucked it inside his jacket. He looked at Tucker. The dog sat near the base of the stairs, watching him. Quiet. Still. Then, almost casually, Tucker rose, crossed to the opposite wall, and placed a paw against it. Noah frowned, walked over. There, hidden in the rough stone, was a faint seam, like the edge of a concealed panel. Noah ran his fingers along the groove, pushed gently. The panel shifted open with a puff of dust. Behind it was a recess, small but deep. And inside it, tucked in a weathered duffel bag, was a military-issue strongbox. Noah reached in and pulled it free. It was heavy, cold, locked with a combination dial worn smooth. He set it on the floor, heart pounding. It didn't look like anything his uncle would have kept casually. This wasn't sentiment. This was something else. He stared at it for a long time, hand resting on the metal surface. Tucker came over, sat beside him, leaned gently into his shoulder. The warmth of him settled Noah's breath. They stayed like that, man and dog, inside the cold silence of the hidden room, surrounded by decades of buried hope. Noah didn't open the box. Not yet. He didn't need to. Not tonight. Because the treasure wasn't just the metal. It was the map, the plan, the proof that his uncle had believed in something bigger than both of them. And Tucker had found it. Outside, snow kept falling, but now it felt less like a wall, more like a curtain, waiting to be pulled back. The wind came screaming down from the ridge that afternoon, sharp as a knife's edge. Pine branches bowed and shuddered. Snow swept in wild sheets across the clearing outside the lodge. But inside, it was the opposite of chaos. Noah was cleaning. He'd cleared out the main living room first, dragged the old couch closer to the fireplace, stacked fresh logs beside the hearth. He swept years of dust from the hardwood, uncovered a faded rug beneath a layer of grime. The silence of the place had shifted. It no longer pressed in. It hummed, watchful, waiting. Tucker followed his every move, never far from reach. Occasionally the dog would sniff at a corner, freeze, ears forward, and let out one sharp bark. Noah started calling it his ghost check. So far, no ghosts, just the history he was slowly unearthing. He was mid-repair on the busted front window frame when he heard it. A voice, faint, panicked, carried by the wind. "Jason!" Noah froze. The shout came again, clearer this time, a woman's voice. "Jason, where are you?" Tucker's ears shot up. He gave a low huff, then bolted towards the door. Noah dropped the hammer, grabbed his coat and followed. Outside, the storm had thickened. Flakes hit sideways. Visibility dropped fast. "Tucker, wait!" But the dog was already slicing through the white, nose low, tail high, heading straight for the tree line. That's when Noah saw her. A woman, maybe mid-30s, in a deep green parka, hair tucked under a wool cap, trudging through knee-deep snow, eyes wild with worry. She didn't see him at first. She was scanning the forest, cupping her mouth. "Jason, answer me!" Noah sprinted toward her, boots punching through the drift. "Hey, you okay?" She spun, startled. Her face was red from the cold, eyes wide. "My student, a boy, Jason. We were hiking near the old trailhead. He ran ahead and I lost sight of him. He's only 9. I think he might have slipped into the ravine." Noah didn't ask more. He just pointed after Tucker, whose dark figure was already weaving between trees. "Follow the dog. He's got him." They plunged into the forest. Noah moved with purpose, memorized the layout years ago, could read the snow like a map. Callie, he didn't know her name yet, kept pace without complaint. Just one hand on a branch, the other clenched tight. 5 minutes later, they heard it. A muffled cry, then a whimper. Tucker was standing at the edge of a shallow ravine, tail stiff, ears pinned forward. Below, tangled in a heap of snow and brush, was a small figure in a red coat. His leg was twisted awkwardly beneath him. "Jason!" the woman shouted, sliding down the bank on her knees. Noah followed close behind. The boy was conscious but in pain. "Don't move," Noah said. "You're gonna be all right." He checked for bleeding. Nothing major. The leg was likely sprained, maybe fractured. The boy clung to his teacher like a lifeline. Tucker stayed just above them, eyes scanning the trees, sentinel still. By the time they got the boy back to the lodge, it was dark. Inside, Noah set Jason up on the couch with a blanket and hot tea. The woman rubbed the boy's hands until they turned pink again. When the worst had passed, she turned to Noah and said softly, "I don't know what would have happened without you. Or him." She looked down at Tucker, who was sitting beside the boy like a statue, tail curled neatly, chest puffed like he knew he'd done something important. "He's not just any dog, is he?" "No," Noah said. "He's Tucker. Retired, technically, but nobody told him." She smiled. The exhaustion was still in her face, but it had softened. I'm Callie Rivers. I teach at Deep Hollow Elementary. Jason's in my class. Noah Briggs, he said. Her eyes lifted a little. Recognition sparked. The veteran who inherited the haunted lodge? That's me. She shook her head, a half laugh. They say crazy things in town, you know, that this place eats people, that it was built on bones. I've heard. Is it true? Noah didn't answer. He just stoked the fire. Later that night, after Callie had called the school to send someone for Jason, and after the boy had finally fallen asleep on the couch, she lingered near the mantel, tracing her fingers along the old stonework. This place has weight, she said. Not just history, something else. Noah didn't look up. He was in the cellar again, lantern on the ground, papers spread around him. She followed him down the stairs. You know this could have collapsed on itself years ago, she said, and yet it's still standing. Some things do that. She watched as he gently unrolled a blueprint he'd found in the trunk earlier. The edges were yellowed, curling, but the ink was still clear. These are building plans, she said. Therapy rooms, kennels? Noah nodded. My uncle's dream. A healing center. For veterans. For anyone, really. But he never finished it. Callie crouched beside him. Her eyes caught on a photograph pinned between two documents. She pulled it free. It showed 6 men in uniform. Younger versions of old soldiers standing before the lodge when it was new. At the center, Walter Briggs, his uncle. Next to him, half hidden in shadow, was a large safe, square, military grade. What's that? She asked, tapping the photo. Noah took it, stared hard. I don't know, he said, but it's not in the basement now. You think? It's still here. I think it's supposed to be. Callie looked at him, her voice quieter. Why hide it? He didn't answer right away. Then, because not every treasure's made of gold. Some of it's made of guilt. Tucker came down the stairs just then. Not barking, not tense, just moving with intention. He sniffed once toward the far wall, then stopped, sat, and stared. Callie followed his gaze. There? Noah didn't speak. He stood, flashlight in hand, and walked toward the wall where the dog waited. Outside, the storm had stopped, but something had just begun. By the next morning, the storm had passed, but a different kind of pressure had begun to gather, quiet and heavy, like the air before thunder. Word had gotten out. It started at the general store, as things always did in Deep Hollow. Someone had seen Callie Rivers' car parked at Pine Lantern. Someone else swore they saw Noah with dirt on his jeans, his dog sniffing at something under the snow. By lunchtime, the whispers had spread. They're digging up old bones. Place was cursed from the start. He's looking for something his uncle never found. Noah heard the murmurs when he stopped in town for supplies. Callie had offered to wait with Tucker at the lodge, finishing up some notes for the school. But even alone, Noah felt their eyes. You know, said a man by the hardware counter, not bothering to hide his voice. That lodge was built on top of a World War II site. Field hospital turned mental unit. Real quiet operation. Shut down fast. Noah didn't respond. 3 men went missing there. Never found. Locals say the mountain swallowed them. Noah placed a bag of nails on the counter and walked out without a word. Back at the lodge, the wind had picked up again, carrying not snow this time, but tension. Callie sat on the porch steps with Tucker, scratching behind his ears. She stood when she saw Noah's face. You heard the stories too, huh? They're getting louder, he said. She nodded slowly. Do you think they're true? Noah glanced out at the tree line. I think they're afraid of what might be. That night, he pulled out the old map again, the one with faded ink and odd notations. Callie looked over his shoulder. Those markings, here, at the edge of the ridge, they don't match any modern topography. Noah nodded. But they line up with the stories, the edge of the property. No structures now, but something used to be there. Tucker stood, stretched, and moved toward the back door. Noah watched him. Looks like we're going. It took them over an hour to reach the edge of the ridge. The path was narrow, tangled with brush, snow clinging to every branch. The moon broke through just enough to cast long silver streaks across the ground. Tucker led the way, ears perked, tail straight, moving with purpose. Is he tracking something? Callie whispered. He always is. Noah said. They reached a clearing. The trees opened wide into a circular patch of earth, ringed with broken stones. Snow had fallen evenly here, untouched, but Tucker froze, then barked, once, twice, and began to dig. Noah moved quickly, dropped to his knees beside him. The snow gave way faster here. The ground beneath wasn't frozen soil. It was something else. Cloth, green, heavy, frayed at the edges. Callie knelt beside them. Her breath caught. That's military canvas. Together they pulled it free. A wooden box, weathered but intact, about 2 feet long, tied tight with paracord faded to grey. Noah paused before opening it. His fingers brushed over the surface. Carved into the lid were 3 sets of initials. He said nothing. Just cut the cord. Inside were personal items, dog tags, a rusted Zippo lighter, a pocket watch broken at the face, a worn leather-bound journal, edges crumbling. The smell of age and silence rose up from it like a breath long held. Callie picked up the tags. Private Jeremy Cole, 19 years old. She swallowed. Noah opened the journal. Most of the entries were short. Dates, unit numbers. But halfway through, the handwriting changed. Sloppier. Desperate. Callie leaned in to read. They were told not to talk, that what happened up here would be erased. He wrote that his friend Danny, another young private, died during an unauthorized experiment. Something about psychological warfare trials. Her voice cracked. They buried it. Literally. Noah's jaw tightened. At the bottom of the box, beneath the journal, lay a folder. Laminated, yellowed, classified, stamped. Property of U.S. Army, not for civilian distribution. Noah opened it carefully. Inside, a photocopy of an internal report. Redactions blacked out most of the names, but enough remained. One page in particular had a signature at the bottom. Walter Briggs. Noah stared. Callie looked at him. Your uncle? He nodded, slow. Authorized disposal of non-compliant personnel. 3 names listed under casualties. Same initials carved into the box. Noah stood, stepping back from the crate like it burned. Tucker didn't move. He just sat there, silent now, watching his human with unblinking eyes. He knew. Noah said. He knew what happened here. Callie's voice was low. And he buried it? Noah didn't answer. A gust of wind swept through the trees. The box creaked. Callie stood beside him, eyes on the folder. What do we do with this? Noah looked at the trees, at the snow, at Tucker, who hadn't taken his eyes off him. I don't know yet, he said, but I think this lodge was never meant to be forgotten. They rewrapped the box, careful and silent. Tucker led them back through the trees, and for the first time since Noah returned to Deep Hollow, he didn't feel like the lodge was waiting for something. It felt like it had chosen. The storm rolled in without warning. Not like the last one, slow and whispering. This one hit like a memory you couldn't outrun. Wind tore through the trees, snapping limbs and dragging clouds low across the ridge. By midday, visibility had dropped to near zero. Snow fell sideways, and the forest groaned beneath its weight. Inside the lodge, Noah paced the hallway, the classified folder resting like a curse on the kitchen table. Callie had gone back to town that morning before the storm hit. She didn't know what he had found last night. Not everything. Not yet. Noah stared at the signature again. Walter Briggs, authorizing a cover-up, declaring 3 deaths unrecoverable and sealing the site for containment and asset disposal. His uncle. The man who raised him after the war took his parents, who taught him how to tie knots, change oil, listen to silence, and the man who signed 3 soldiers into oblivion. Noah didn't know what hurt more, the betrayal or the responsibility now pressing down on him like the snow outside. Tucker sat nearby, eyes never leaving him, like he knew, like he'd seen it too. Noah picked up the folder and lit the fireplace. He stood there for a long time, flame flickering in his eyes. Then Tucker barked. Once, sharp, a warning. Noah turned. The dog was already moving towards the door, low to the ground, hackles up. A sound followed, barely audible under the storm's roar. A branch snapping, then another, closer. Noah grabbed his coat, slinging the shotgun off the wall. He wasn't a paranoid man, but instincts didn't retire with rank. He stepped out onto the porch, snow blinding. Tucker was already leaping off into the white. "Stay close!" Noah shouted. The wind stole his voice. He followed the dog into the trees, boots sinking deep. The snow was thick, angry. Tucker moved with certainty, cutting toward the edge of the ravine. That's when the growl came. Not human. Not distant. Something lunged out from the brush, a blur of brown and teeth. Coyote too big, too close, hunger and madness in its eyes. Noah raised the shotgun but didn't fire. Tucker got there first. The shepherd slammed into the animal mid-leap. They tumbled through the snow in a violent blur, snarls, yelps, fur flying. Then Tucker rolled free, limping, blood in the snow. The coyote scrambled away, vanished back into the trees. "No!" Noah dropped to his knees. Tucker whined, dragging his back leg. A long gash bled down his flank. Noah ripped off his glove, pressing his hand against the wound. "Hold still, buddy. You did good. You saved me." The dog licked his wrist once, then collapsed into his arms. Snow kept falling, merciless. Noah lifted him, cradling his weight against his chest. He stumbled back through the white, lungs burning, boots slipping on ice. The world narrowed into breath and pain, and Tucker's weight going still. By the time he reached the lodge, his legs were shaking. Inside, he laid Tucker gently on the rug near the fire. Blood soaked into the fabric. He moved fast, grabbing gauze, peroxide, anything from the old med kit. His hands shook as he cleaned the wound. Tucker didn't make a sound. "Stay with me," Noah whispered. "That's an order." He worked in silence. The kind of silence he remembered from deployment, when every second was a countdown. When it was done, he wrapped the dog in a wool blanket. Tucker's breathing was shallow but steady. Noah sat beside him, hand resting gently on his side. "I never wanted this," he said softly. "I didn't come back here to dig up ghosts. I just wanted something that made sense." His eyes shifted toward the folder still on the table. The fire cast its shadow like a coffin across the floor. "I could burn it," he said. "No one would know. Keep the lodge. Fix it. Finish what he started." Tucker didn't move. "But if I do that," Noah continued, "I'm him. I become the man who buries the truth when it's too hard to face." The dog's tail thumped once, weak, but there. Noah looked at him, tears burning his eyes now. "You really are the last damn honest soul I know." He rose, walked to the table, picked up the folder, and didn't burn it. He placed it inside a weathered satchel. On top of it, he laid the journal, the tags, the photograph. He zipped it shut and sat back down next to Tucker, laying a hand on the dog's head. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, a decision had been made. He wouldn't bury what the mountain tried to hide, even if it meant giving up everything. Noah didn't sleep the night after the storm. He sat by the fire with Tucker's head resting on his thigh, the dog's breathing slow but steady under the weight of fresh stitches and exhaustion. Outside, the storm had pulled back into the hills, leaving the world in that eerie quiet that only follows a fight. But inside Noah, something louder had begun. He stared at the folder resting on the table. The satchel was packed. The files, the tags, the journal, all ready. By morning, the decision had hardened. He made the call. The number belonged to Evelyn Shaw, a former war correspondent and retired investigative journalist. She'd written a 3-part expose a decade ago on military cover-ups, back when no one wanted to listen. Walter Briggs' name had come up in her work once before. Now it was time she saw everything. When Evelyn answered, her voice was gravel wrapped in black coffee. "Who gave you this number?" "My name's Noah Briggs," he said. "My uncle was Walter Briggs, and I think I have something you've been looking for." There was silence. Then, "Talk." He told her everything. The hidden room, the buried crate, the documents. He didn't embellish. He didn't need to. Truth has its own weight. Evelyn arrived in Deep Hollow 3 days later. She was tall, sharp-eyed, with silver hair tied back in a low braid. Her boots were worn, her coat stitched at the sleeves. She didn't shake hands when she stepped into Pine Lantern Lodge. She walked straight to the table, opened the satchel, and began reading. Tucker sat nearby, watching her with cautious approval. After an hour, she leaned back in the chair, tapping the tags against her knuckle. "You understand what this means, don't you?" she asked. "I do. You're handing over proof that your own family helped bury 3 men. The fallout won't be clean. It's not supposed to be." She nodded slowly, her face unreadable. "Then let's get to work." Within a week, the first article dropped. Forgotten Soldiers of Deep Hollow, the Lodge, the cover-up, and the legacy buried in snow. The internet caught fire. Photos of the dog tags, scanned pages of Walter's journal, maps of the property. The article didn't accuse, it illuminated. Evelyn's writing was surgical. She didn't vilify Walter Briggs, she exposed the system that let silence win for too long. But Deep Hollow wasn't ready for it. The backlash came hard. "You're spitting on your uncle's grave," one old man growled at Noah in the post office. "He built that place with his bare hands, and you're turning it into a circus." Others whispered worse, called him traitor, opportunist, said he was cashing in on the dead. Noah didn't answer any of them. He kept rebuilding. Callie came back up to the lodge often now. She brought books for the shelves, helped reorganize the front room into a space that felt less like a cabin and more like a place people might come to heal. Frank Dawson showed up the following Saturday. He didn't knock, just stepped in through the back and set a crate of tools on the floor. "You still got a roof leaking in the kitchen?" he asked. Noah turned, surprised. "I didn't think you'd show." Frank grunted. "Didn't think I would either." They worked for a while without words, the sound of hammer and nails filling the space like music. Eventually, Frank spoke. "Walter wasn't a bad man," he said. "Just scared, like the rest of us. They gave him a file and a signature line, told him it would protect the mission." Noah didn't look up. "I'm not trying to ruin him." "I know," Frank said, "but not everybody does." He set down the hammer, wiped his hands on his flannel. "Listen, you're going to hear a lot of things in town. Most won't be kind, but what you're doing, it matters." Noah finally met his gaze. "Then why does it feel like I'm tearing something down instead of building it?" Frank walked over to the fireplace, knelt beside Tucker, who'd been resting with one paw bandaged. The dog raised his head just enough to meet the old man's eyes. Frank scratched behind his ears. "Because sometimes he said softly. You've got to tear down the lies first. The good men we lost, Jeremy, Danny, Morales, they never got to come home. You're not betraying your uncle, kid. You're fixing the hole the rest of us left behind. Noah felt his throat tighten. Tucker thumped his tail once against the floor. Frank stood, grunting as his knees popped. Let them talk, he said. You keep building. They'll catch up, or they won't. But the ones who need this place, they'll find you. That night, Evelyn sent a second article to print. This one was titled, A Lodge for the Lost, How One Veteran is Rebuilding What Others Tried to Forget. It included photos of the lodge mid-renovation, Callie and Noah painting beams, Tucker curled up by the fire, and at the end a quote. He didn't bark for food, he barked for the forgotten. By morning, the tide began to turn. Letters came in from families of the missing soldiers. Donations started arriving from veterans groups, and one by one, the people who had doubted began showing up, not with apologies, but with tool belts, rakes, or simply a willingness to help. Outside, the snow began to melt in slow, steady drops from the roof. Inside, something deeper had already begun to thaw. And in the middle of it all, Tucker stood guard, not over a secret, but over a future. The lodge hadn't seen this much movement in decades. Cars lined the winding dirt road leading up from Deep Hollow, their tires sinking into early spring mud. Camera crews unloaded tripods beside volunteers carrying folding chairs and coffee thermoses. A tent had been set up just outside the lodge, its canvas flapping in the breeze. Inside, sunlight poured through cleaned windows. Dust had been banished. The hearth glowed warm. And at the center of it all sat Tucker, healed, alert, tail curled neatly at his side, like he knew today was his. Noah watched from the porch, arms crossed, jaw tight. You okay? Callie asked beside him. I didn't think it'd get this far, he said. Didn't expect anyone to care. She smiled. That's the thing about truth. Once it breathes, it spreads. The article Evelyn Shaw wrote had done more than stir outrage. It had opened doors. Within 2 weeks of publication, the Department of Defense issued a formal statement. An internal review had been initiated. Old files pulled from archives, blacked out lines unredacted. And with them, the names of Jeremy Cole, Daniel Morales, and Liam Hart, officially recognized as casualties resulting from misconduct and experimental overreach. It wasn't everything, but it was something. A week later, a black SUV pulled into the lodge's clearing. Out stepped a tall man in his late 70s, shoulders slightly hunched but eyes still bright. He wore a jacket marked with the faded insignia of the 77th Infantry Medical Division. Frank Dawson greeted him like a brother. Eli Weston, Frank said, voice cracking. I thought you were long gone. Almost was, the man replied, gripping Frank's shoulder. But this story pulled me back. Eli sat with Noah in the lodge's back room that afternoon, sifting through photographs and worn letters. His hands trembled as he picked up the dog tags. I was there, he said softly, when it all started falling apart. We weren't allowed to talk about it. Hell, we weren't even allowed to grieve. His eyes welled, but he didn't look away. I knew Walter. He was a good man in a bad place. That order he signed? He regretted it. I know he did. He wrote me once, years later. Said, some ghosts don't want peace, they want truth. I never understood it until now. Later that week, the town's elementary school announced a memorial assembly. Callie helped organize it. They set it up in the gymnasium, but it felt more like a chapel. Students painted banners. One read, Remembering the Lost. Another, Service Never Forgotten. At the front of the stage, 3 empty chairs stood, each marked with the names of the young soldiers. The mayor spoke first, then Evelyn, then Frank. But it was Noah who spoke last. He didn't read from a script. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, voice low but steady. This town gave me a lot of silence growing up. Some of it earned, some of it fear. But silence can rot a place from the inside. It can bury people before they're gone. He looked at the students. You're going to hear people say what we found was just history. That digging it up caused trouble. But if you remember anything from today, remember this. There's no shame in telling the truth. And there's no peace without it. The crowd stood in applause. Noah didn't move, but his eyes found Tucker, who lay just off stage, watching calmly. A week later, the town council passed a motion. Pine Lantern Lodge would become an official community sanctuary and veteran healing site. Work began immediately to expand it in accordance with Walter Briggs' original plans, and that Friday, in a small but packed ceremony outside the lodge, Tucker was awarded the town's first ever Medal of Honor for civilian canine service. The mayor held the medal awkwardly as Tucker approached, tail wagging slowly, flank still bandaged but healing well. He sat politely when asked. Let the medal hang from the ribbon over his neck. And when the applause came, he didn't bark. He didn't need to. Noah crouched beside him, running a hand through his fur. You earned that, buddy, he whispered. Every bit of it. Tucker looked up, eyes glowing amber, calm and proud. A boy stepped forward. Jason, the student Tucker had helped rescue weeks earlier. He held out a card drawn in crayon. It showed a dog standing in front of a cabin, a red heart over his chest. Beneath it, Tucker saved me. The dog sniffed it once, then licked the boy's hand. That night, the lodge glowed with soft lamplight and laughter. Veterans sat beside locals. Frank told stories on the porch. Evelyn typed notes for her next piece, and Callie helped children hang more drawings on the wall. Tucker lay beneath the dining table, eyes half closed, surrounded by boots, laughter, and warmth. Noah stood by the door, watching it all. It wasn't about legacy anymore. It was about life. Healing had finally begun, not in fanfare but in firelight, in shared bread, in the slow return of trust. And at the center of it, like always, was a dog who never asked for anything, but had given them everything. 1 year later, the mountains breathed different. Gone were the storms of scandal, the heavy silence of secrets, the wary glances from townsfolk. In their place, a slower rhythm had taken hold, like the steady heartbeat of a place finally learning how to live again. The sign at the entrance had been replaced. Pine Lantern Lodge Veterans Retreat and Healing Center. The wood was sanded smooth, the lettering carved deep and deliberate, with a bronze plate beneath that simply read, Built from memory, guarded by loyalty. On any given day, you'd hear the thud of boots across the porch, the creak of old beams mingled with young laughter, and occasionally the low, friendly bark of a dog greeting someone new. Tucker had taken that job for himself. He no longer barked out of warning. He barked for recognition, for welcome, for ritual. He spent most afternoons on the front porch, stretched out under the rocking bench like a shaggy monument. His muzzle had turned mostly white now, his movements slower, deliberate. But his eyes were still fire. He watched everything. Veterans came and went, some staying weeks, others only a night. A few returned with their children, or therapy dogs of their own. The lodge had grown, a refurbished east wing with private rooms, a new workshop out back, and a vegetable garden that wrapped around the hill like a promise. But the soul of the place hadn't changed. Callie had moved in full-time that spring. She now helped oversee operations, ran the education program, coordinated therapy sessions, even started a literacy outreach project in the nearby town. Her desk sat in the corner of what had once been Walter Briggs' study. Now it was filled with books, lesson plans, and every week a fresh vase of wildflowers she insisted on picking herself. She and Noah worked in near wordless rhythm. morning walks to the ridge, shared coffee, meetings with visiting counselors and donors. Neither called it love, but it was something stronger, earned, quiet, present. That morning she found Noah in the barn behind the lodge, helping a teenager named Micah refit a pair of crutches. The boy had come 3 weeks earlier, foster care, bad knee, attitude thick as armor. But Tucker had broken through in a day. Now Micah wouldn't leave without saying goodbye to the dog. When Callie called out to them, Noah looked up from the workbench, wiping his hands on a rag. "You're going to miss us when school starts again," she teased. Micah shrugged but smiled. "I already do." Out on the porch, a small group of school kids was learning how to plant beans in raised beds. 2 golden retrievers wandered between rows, tongues out, tails high. A retired Marine named Lou directed them gently, his voice soft despite a body built like a concrete wall. Inside the lodge, a mural had begun to take shape in the dining hall. Veterans and students had painted it together over the months, a long sweep of blue and green, with outlines of mountains, silhouettes of service members, and at the center, a German shepherd sitting beneath a lantern. Tucker. That afternoon, a group from a nearby VA hospital visited for a tour. Some came with skepticism, others with visible scars. Noah walked them through the halls, pointing out the therapy rooms, the archive of letters from soldiers past, the restored blueprints that Walter Briggs once hid in the basement. But it was Tucker who sold it. He stood slowly when the group arrived, stepped forward, tail low and easy. He pressed his head gently against a man's hip, an amputee who hadn't smiled once until that moment. Noah saw it happen. The man reached down, scratched behind Tucker's ears, and whispered something only the dog could hear. The lodge was full that night. Frank returned just before dinner, his hair longer, beard wilder, stories even taller. He brought pies from a diner 2 counties over and declared them absolutely inedible as he ate 3 slices in one sitting. Callie lit candles on every table. The lights were dim, the windows open to the scent of rain on pine. Laughter echoed off the wood beams. It didn't sound like a celebration. It sounded like breathing. Noah sat on the porch with Tucker beside him, one hand resting on the dog's back. The stars hadn't come out yet, but the sky was soft with dusk. From inside, music played low, a harmonica, off-key and perfect. "You still watching over us?" Noah asked, glancing at Tucker. The dog didn't answer, but his tail thumped once. Callie stepped out, handing Noah a mug of tea. She leaned against the post, brushing a few stray strands of hair from her face. "They're asking about expanding the kennels," she said. "Might start pairing therapy dogs with more incoming vets." He nodded. "Let me guess. You already said yes?" "Of course I did." He smiled. She leaned over, kissed the top of Tucker's head. "Still our best volunteer." Tucker lifted his eyes, just enough to show he agreed. The porch creaked softly as people moved in and out of the lodge, some carrying food, others just lingering in the doorway, not quite ready to go home. And for those who had nowhere else to go, this was it. A place rebuilt not from ambition, but from memory. A home that healed without asking questions. And at the center of it all, a dog who once barked at ghosts, now barking for the living, for welcome, for hope. Chapter 9. Legacy. The school bus rumbled up the gravel road like an old memory returning home. It hissed to a stop just outside the pine lantern gate, and 20 middle schoolers poured out in a blur of sneakers, backpacks, and half-suppressed excitement. They fanned out quickly, staring at the lodge like it was a living thing, which, in a way, it was. The tours happened twice a season now. Local students came up to learn about history, service, healing, but no one ever called it a museum. This was a place still breathing. Callie led the group, pointing out the restored sections of the lodge, the East Wing housing therapy rooms, the library lined with journals, the dog kennels out back where trainers worked with new rescues. Tucker didn't greet them at the door like he used to. Not because he was gone, because he was tired. He rested in his usual spot on the porch, head between his paws, his fur mostly white now except for one dark streak down his spine. The kids gave him space. They always did. Somehow they knew he wasn't just a dog. He was something more. Inside, the students filed into the main hall. Photographs lined the walls. Veterans, volunteers, old blueprints, faded letters. And one large framed image above the fireplace. A young German shepherd standing alert in the snow, his paw resting on the edge of a half-dug wooden box. Behind him, the outline of a man barely visible. The caption read, "Tucker, 2016 present. He didn't bark for food. He barked for the forgotten." A boy near the back, thin mop of dark hair, hands in his hoodie, raised a finger. Is that the dog who found the treasure? The room quieted. Noah Briggs, standing near the mantel, turned toward him. He looked different now, more relaxed in the shoulders, his beard trimmed close, lines around his eyes earned not from exhaustion, but sun and laughter. He smiled. "He didn't dig for treasure," Noah said. "He dug for the truth." The boy tilted his head. "But didn't he find something hidden?" "He did," Noah said. "But it wasn't gold or money. It was a story no one wanted to remember. Tucker didn't just find it. He reminded us that some things are too important to stay buried." The boy nodded slowly. Later, while the students wrote in the guest book near the door, the same boy scribbled carefully across a blank page. "He didn't dig for treasure. He dug for the truth." Then below it, "I'll come back when I'm old enough. I want to help." Ben, age 12, Callie read it over his shoulder. "Promise?" she asked. He looked up. "Promise." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the chimes along the porch. Tucker lifted his head at the sound, ears twitching once before settling again. Noah sat beside him as the bus pulled away down the trail. He watched the dust rise behind it, watched the lodge settle back into quiet. "Still teaching, huh?" he murmured. Tucker didn't move, just blinked slowly. That night, after everyone had left, Callie pinned the boy's note to the new corkboard by the main door. It hung beside dozens of others, drawings, letters, photographs. And just beneath it, in Tucker's paw print frame, the original blueprint Walter Briggs had drawn, still marked with the words, "Veterans Healing Lodge, a place to rebuild what war took." Noah stood in the doorway for a long time before turning out the lights. Legacy, he thought, wasn't something you built all at once. It was passed down, in silence, in stories, and in the quiet paw steps of a dog who refused to let history stay buried. The school bus rumbled up the gravel road like an old memory returning home. It hissed to a stop just outside the pine lantern gate, and 20 middle schoolers poured out in a blur of sneakers, backpacks, and half-suppressed excitement. They fanned out quickly, staring at the lodge like it was a living thing, which, in a way, it was. The tours happened twice a season now. Local students came up to learn about history, service, healing. But no one ever called it a museum. This was a place still breathing. Callie led the group, pointing out the restored sections of the lodge, the East Wing housing therapy rooms, the library lined with journals, the dog kennels out back where trainers worked with new rescues. Tucker didn't greet them at the door like he used to, not because he was gone, because he was tired. He rested in his usual spot on the porch, head between his paws, his fur mostly white now except for one dark streak down his spine. The kids gave him space. They always did. Somehow they knew he wasn't just a dog. He was something more. Inside, the students filed into the main hall. Photographs lined the walls. Veterans, volunteers, old blueprints, faded letters. And one large framed image above the fireplace. A young German shepherd standing alert in the snow, his paw resting on the edge of a half-dug wooden box. Behind him, the outline of a man barely visible. The caption read, "Tucker, 2016, present. He didn't bark for food, he barked for the forgotten." A boy near the back, thin mop of dark hair, hands in his hoodie, raised a finger. "Is that the dog who found the treasure?" The room quieted. Noah Briggs, standing near the mantel, turned toward him. He looked different now, more relaxed in the shoulders, his beard trimmed close, lines around his eyes earned not from exhaustion, but sun and laughter. He smiled. "He didn't dig for treasure," Noah said. "He dug for the truth." The boy tilted his head. "But didn't he find something hidden?" "He did," Noah said. "But it wasn't gold or money. It was a story no one wanted to remember. Tucker didn't just find it. He reminded us that some things are too important to stay buried." The boy nodded slowly. Later, while the students wrote in the guest book near the door, the same boy scribbled carefully across a blank page. "He didn't dig for treasure. He dug for the truth." Then below it, "I'll come back when I'm old enough. I want to help." Ben, age 12, Callie read it over his shoulder. "Promise?" she asked. He looked up. "Promise." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the chimes along the porch. Tucker lifted his head at the sound, ears twitching once before settling again. Noah sat beside him as the bus pulled away down the trail. He watched the dust rise behind it, watched the lodge settle back into quiet. "Still teaching, huh?" he murmured. Tucker didn't move, just blinked slowly. That night, after everyone had left, Callie pinned the boy's note to the new corkboard by the main door. It hung beside dozens of others, drawings, letters, photographs. And just beneath it, in Tucker's paw-print frame, the original blueprint Walter Briggs had drawn, still marked with the words, "Veterans Healing Lodge, a place to rebuild what war took." Noah stood in the doorway for a long time before turning out the lights. Legacy, he thought, wasn't something you built all at once. It was passed down, in silence, in stories, and in the quiet paw steps of a dog who refused to let history stay buried. The air had shifted. Autumn came quietly to Deep Hollow, not with fanfare, but with that soft hush that made every sound feel sacred. The pines whispered slower now. The wind carried the scent of wood smoke and fallen leaves. Golden light spilled across the porch of Pine Lantern Lodge, painting everything it touched in a kind of quiet reverence. Tucker lay where he always had, right at the top step, head resting on his paws, ears twitching every so often. He didn't move much these days, but he didn't need to. Just being there was enough. His presence was a constant, like the sun rising over the ridge, like the history etched into every beam of the lodge. A group of children wandered up the gravel path, part of a school weekend program Callie had helped organize. They were led by 2 volunteers, bundled in flannel and wide-eyed with curiosity. Most of them walked right past Tucker, a little in awe, except for one. A girl, maybe 8, with braids and a polka-dot notebook clutched to her chest, paused at the bottom step. She looked at Tucker, then up at the lodge, then back again. "Is he still guarding the lodge?" she asked softly. Noah stood nearby, leaning against a beam with a mug of coffee in his hand. The years sat more gently on him now. The hard edges had softened, not vanished, just settled. He looked at the girl, then down at Tucker. He crouched, ran his hand slowly along the old dog's spine. "He's not guarding the lodge," Noah said with a faint smile. "He's guarding a promise." The girl blinked. "What kind of promise?" Noah met her eyes. The kind you make when someone gives you everything, and all they ask in return is that you never forget. She didn't speak again. Just nodded once, then reached out and gently touched Tucker's paw. Inside, the radio crackled to life on the windowsill. A familiar voice filled the lodge. Warm, clear, and steady. Callie, broadcasting her weekly message from the community station down in town. A segment she started months ago called Echoes of the Ridge. Some truths don't die, her voice said over the soft hum of the static. They just wait for the right hearts to listen. Noah stepped inside. He poured a second cup of coffee and sat near the window, listening. The photos on the walls flickered in the light. The lodge breathed with memory. Outside, Tucker shifted slightly, nose twitching at the wind. His eyes stayed half closed, but his ears perked, ever alert, still watching, still guarding. The camera would have pulled wide now, if it were a film. Captured the long shot of the lodge bathed in amber light, the porch quiet and holy. The girl crouched beside the old shepherd, her notebook resting open across her knees. Captured the quote carved into the wood just above the door. He didn't bark for food, he barked for the forgotten. And beneath it, written in chalk by another visitor just days ago, "What's your story with a loyal pet?" Maybe this story moved you. Maybe it reminded you of a dog that waited by your door, of a truth that still lives in your chest, or a place that once felt like home. If it did, don't let it end here. Like, share, subscribe to the German Shepherd channel. And in the comments, tell us, what did your dog guard? What did they never let you forget? Because some stories don't end. They just wait for the right ears to listen.